What's going on, everybody? It's Chris from Profoto USA, and I'm hanging out with my buddy Michael Anthony at his studio here in Southern California. What's going on, man? How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. Thank you for coming by today. I'm glad the weather's not too bad. So.
Yeah, it's nice. It's everyone knows I always talk about that I'm from Atlanta, so it's definitely colder there today.
Yeah. I just got back from Atlanta, and I was telling Chris, for imaging, I walked outside without a jacket because in LA you always tend to forget your jackets when you travel places. Walked outside and it felt like I got hit in the head with a sledgehammer from the cold. Yeah.
So we're gonna get into some questions first, but I know people really like to see people's studios. So you want to do a quick little walk around with your studio?
Yeah.
So cool. So I'm gonna pull this up right here and let you show us around.
All right. So we just moved in here about a year ago. It's still kind of under construction, but this is the front entranceway. This is our studio manager, Courtney, right here.
Hey,
so
Courtney.
When clients walk in, this is everything they see, and then this is the boss's office right here, and this is the boss. Say hi, Jen.
It's the boss. What's up, Jen?
She runs the place. It's my wife, Jen. And then I will take you guys back to our shooting area. So moving here, the goal was to be able to do a lot more portraits and have places to shoot. And this is what we have for our shooting area. So the bay back there is where we do most of our portraits, and then we have obviously some storage and stuff here. Mm-hmm. The bed area is for boudoir, and we're building a couple more sets right here.
Very cool.
Vanity, and this is where we print. So we do a lot of our own printing
Big printer and stuff. That's awesome. It's a killer shooting space.
Thank you.
A lot of room to do a lot of things.
Thank you. Yeah.
Very cool. So for everybody who always wants to see people's studios, there you go. This is where Michael Anthony does the business. See some of his killer work on the walls.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Let's get into it. All right. So I'm actually gonna pop this up because first, while I'm bringing up questions that people had, let's just tell, for people who don't know you, just tell them a little bit about who you are and kind of how you got started and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I'm a wedding and portrait photographer, primarily wedding and portraits, based in Los Angeles, California. I own a company called Studio 23 Photography. Our team shoots about 130 to 150 weddings per year and about 200 portrait sessions. So it's a team of 10 photographers, and I still shoot about 30 to 40 weddings myself every year.
That's awesome. So are you doing most of your work here in Southern California? I mean, I know you do some destinations and stuff like that.
So the vast majority of our work is done here in Southern California. We shoot about 10 destination weddings per year all throughout the world.
That's awesome. How did you get into wedding photography?
Yeah, so I was a LAPD officer for 5 years, and my second year on the job, LAPD told me they were sending me to go work in the jails because it was a new program that they were testing. So I had nothing to do at the time, and photography was always kind of a little bit of a hobby. So I started reading books while I was sitting around most of the day, and kind of picked up the skill set then. Kind of gravitated toward weddings. I just love the idea of, and the challenge, should I say, of trying to capture, moments as they were happening, and tell stories. And the rest is kind of history. So that was about 6 or 7 years ago now.
That's awesome. And we'll talk about gear, because I think people are always jazzed. People always want to know what kind of stuff.
Myself included, right?
Yeah. I think if most of the people that I'm friends with, you're probably about as gear crazy as I am.
Yeah.
I always love new technology and stuff like that and stuff. So what? Why do you shoot Profoto?
It really comes down to a couple of things. I mean, reliability is going to be the number one thing. As you guys know, if you're shooting weddings, your gear has to be reliable. You can't be focused on having to tinker with it or having to worry about if your light's going to go off in a critical moment. So
totally.
The reliability, the build quality, and then the consistency in the color are some of the reasons why I love Profoto.
That's awesome. And just because people are out there people always want to know what kind of cameras and stuff you shoot. So why don't we talk a little bit about that, and why do you choose that stuff as well?
Yeah, I've shot with just about every camera except for Nikon's. Never used Nikon before. So we currently shoot with the Canon system and Sigma glass. Those are a good combination that I really like, a combination of Canon and Sigma glass. But I shoot with Canon 5D Mark IVs primarily for the wedding day, and then I have a Fuji medium format that I use for specialty shoots.
Very cool. And that's obviously most of that stuff is relegated to being in the studio.
Yeah, it's not going to be for wedding days.
Very cool. So and I know you do a lot of workshops and stuff too. So like, what is that something that you enjoy doing as well? Is it like, do you get a lot of people in there teaching a lot of stuff about the things?
Oh no, I love teaching. I mean, I got into teaching in photography back in 2014. I've been doing it ever since, and I enjoy being able to help better the industry. I feel like the educators and the industry was very good to us when I was starting out, and anytime that I can pay that back it just makes me happy to do so. And so we do about 2 to 3 private workshops a year, and then we speak at conferences as well too.
And I know, I am a member of your wedding photography group, and the information you guys share with people is amazing. So if you guys are ever looking into getting into the wedding business, this guy does awesome workshops. What do you think makes your wedding photography different than other people's?
Yeah, I mean, I would say versatility, and people probably don't expect me to say that. They probably expect me to say things like lighting and composition, but I feel like those are skill sets that we should all be practicing and trying to be good at. But I think what makes a good wedding photographer is the ability to be versatile on a wedding day, to be able to shoot images that are cinematic, photojournalistic, traditional, product photography, all sorts of different types of photography. Because when you get into weddings, it really is that. It's a combination of all of those different things, and your style of photography, or your skill set, should I say, should probably be able to encompass all of those things together in order to give your client the most amount of options in terms of their wedding album.
Yeah. How long do you think it took you to find your style, like from beginning to kind of, obviously I think we're always growing.
Yeah.
But I mean, it feels like you obviously set into a style that's very specifically yours.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that, because the first thing you said, that it's always growing, is very true. I mean, I would say that my style of photography is always changing, and it's always open for interpretation, right, or open for change. And the kind of cinematic portraiture that a lot of our clients come to us for, I started doing that years ago, and I was always attracted to the use of off-camera lighting, and that's obviously a centerpiece of how we create the images that we do. So just kind of starting down that path, being able to seek out amazing locations, getting hired to shoot destination weddings in amazing places, all of those things together kind of came into this environmental style of portrait that our clients come to us for now.
Now, this is obviously a question that I feel like I know the answer to, but maybe other people want to know. So like, when you were experimenting and trying to find that voice, was that something that were you booking like personal work things, or were you trying to do this stuff like trying to push it a little bit during your weddings?
So I think it's important to practice in a non-wedding environment in a lot of cases. So we're big advocates of image competition. We like to enter different image competitions, and when we shoot for those competitions, that's a good time to practice and try new things in a lot of cases. But to answer your question, actually a lot of it is done on a wedding day too, not the experimental portion, but once we start to feel comfortable in the skill set that we've practiced, then we will apply it with our clients, right? And ultimately the test of whether or not it's something that we're gonna keep or pursue is whether or not our clients take to it, right? So if they're buying those images for print, or if they are putting them in their album, to me, that's what makes up the bulk of our style, right? That's how we're gonna determine whether or not that's something we're gonna continue with. Because if, no matter how much us as photographers like something, if our clients aren't buying it, then they're ultimately the most important judges of our work.
Yeah. So what do you think some of the biggest mistakes are that like photographers get into, or photographers make, when they're just jumping into the wedding photography business?
In terms of style, or?
I think I mean really anything. I mean, I think people are going to wonder, like, from the business side, from the style side, all of that.
I would definitely say in terms of business is not understanding your cost of doing business and what it really costs to run a business. I say that when people come into this, it's easy to determine your hard costs going into a job, like how much does an album cost, how much does a second shooter cost, right? But then you have to look at things like how much is your marketing, right? And divide that out per amount of clients you have, your studio rent, all those things as well too. And when you really understand that number, then it helps you to price your work appropriately. Because if we start our business priced too low, it's very hard to raise prices over time. The market just doesn't take to it once your studio is known for a certain price point or a certain thing. And from a style aspect of it, because they are really two different things. There's an art of business and an art of photography, right? And from the art of photography standpoint, I would say that the biggest mistake that people tend to make is to become complacent in their work and just think that something's working and not really go out and seek professional advice in terms of competition or asking their clients, surveying their clients as to what's working and what's not. Because people aren't always honest about our work and what's good and what's not. And the only way to find that out is to ask your clients or the people who are buying it.
Yeah, I think at least in my photographic experience, the mentors have always been a really, really big thing too. And I think a lot of people overlook that. I mean, I think there's a lot of great information on the internet. We try to provide a lot of good information with Profoto and stuff like that. But I think personally, mentorship is pretty invaluable. And
I think it's so important. Yeah, to find a good mentor. Sal Sankata has been a good friend of mine and a good mentor for years in our business. But I feel like finding that person who who can be honest with you about your business and who you're willing to look up to and take their advice is very important. I feel like I said before, style and photography and business are two completely separate things. So if you're learning from a business mentor, it should be somebody who's walked in that path or has had success in their business as well. And in photography, obviously you want to find people whose work you admire, but sometimes we conflate those two and bring them together when they should be completely separate.
Gotcha. So just, like you said, remembering that the business side is the business side and the art side is the art side. I think a lot of people lose that. I think people get really, really enamored too in like what photography is and like I'm creating art. Like it's like, but you've got to put food on your table.
And then going back to that, like you asked me mistakes, right? And I would say probably now that I'm thinking about it, the number one mistake that artists make, and it doesn't matter what stage you are in your business, is to let your ego kind of get in the way of your own success. And once you believe that you have nothing to learn at that point, then you stop growing and the market will continue to pass you by.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think a lot of people let their egos definitely get the best of them. Let's see if I have any questions right here from Facebook. Joel Ruiz said hello. He says you're letting your hair grow out. That's awesome.
Yeah, we're in the awkward stage right now. We've been talking about this earlier today, so I'm getting through it, guys. Now we're on Facebook Live, so you're getting through it with me.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think too, talking about what because I've known Michael for a while, and we have a good relationship. We were talking about some stuff earlier, and we were talking about brutal honesty, and I think that's another big thing too, is finding people that you can surround yourself with who can be brutally honest with you, to make sure that once again you're not resting on your laurels, and that sometimes you have to be checked.
Yeah,
sometimes
100%.
you just have to be.
Yeah, and like I've said this before, and sometimes it hurts to hear things that are negative about your work and your business. But if you think about it, right, go through your Facebook comments, and you might have 30 comments on an image where people are telling you how great it is, right? But the one you remember is the one person who gave you critique or criticism. And it's not always good critique or criticism, but it does stick with you, right? So if you hear that from somebody who you do actually, admire, or who's a mentor in your business, it will help you grow, right? Because you're going to remember that the next time you're out there shooting, not to make a mistake with posing or lighting or whatever it may be.
Yeah, and I think too, something important you just said there is, somebody that you admire and respect, because obviously there's always people who will, try to put you down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I think people could probably get mired in that too, and start overthinking things that they shouldn't be overthinking because some random person gave you some criticism that may or not have been relevant.
Yeah, you have to be careful with that, because again, Facebook and Instagram and social media is filled with people who you might not necessarily admire their work, but if they're giving you advice that is not beneficial to you, it might take you in the wrong direction, right? So always listen to the people who you admire, who you trust, who have offered to mentor you, who have walked that path before, and ultimately that's going to help you grow as an artist and a business person.
Yeah, and I think what's tough too for some people to realize is at the end of the day, really the client that you're serving is your client. Yeah. Like it's that person on Facebook. I mean, they may have something that they want to say against it, but they're not your clients for the most part. Come to you because you are what you are, and your look is the way that it is, and so I think that's one of the big things too, is taking that criticism from the people we respect, and making sure you kind of shelf the stuff that doesn't matter as much, and remember that your clients are coming to you for a reason.
Yeah. So you don't want to stray too far off your path, right? So for me, if I post an image and it gets negative feedback from photographers online, that doesn't necessarily mean that my clients are not liking it, right? So that's important to, again, separate those two things and just kind of learn what to listen to and learn what to ignore.
So if someone's just getting started in the wedding game, what would you say, like, give me like 5 things that you would say, these are must-dos?
Yeah, so first thing, again, like we already mentioned, find a mentor, right? Find somebody you look up to and you can be inspired by. That's the most important thing, I think. Learn your business and put together a business plan. Don't just get into weddings and do it without a business plan. There are important things that you have to consider. This is someone's, they're spending a lot of money on this day and ultimately a lot of money to have those memories documented. So that's important to make sure that, you're insured and you have the skill set necessary to be able to, deliver a good end product. Always focus on the client experience. Again, and this applies, by the way, to all genres of photography, not just weddings. When you guys are in business, your clients are not just buying photos from you, they're buying an experience. And they might not know that, right? But at the end of the day, they are. And their perception of their images will be directly related to the experience that you leave them with. And there's studies that show that in all sorts of, all sorts of capacities. Make sure that you guys are delivering them a very, very good experience from start to finish. And if you follow that, I promise you, your business will be successful just by itself, right? So that's very important. Invest in good quality gear and buy it one time. Too often in our industry, we're going through technology like it's disposable, and again, from a business standpoint, very bad decision. Just make sure that you spend money one time, invest in good quality gear that will last you a really long time, that you don't have to keep updating every single year as well too.
And that's actually something that I tell people all the time when they're talking about Profoto stuff, because sometimes they see the price tag and it takes their breath away for a second. But I think some people really start thinking about everything in the industry as being consumable. And you're like, a new camera is going to come out next year, a new camera is going to come out the year after that. Whereas when you have really good pieces of equipment that are meant to last a long time, those aren't supposed to be upgraded every year.
And it's in part our fault. As an industry, we have put such an emphasis and importance on gear and less of an importance on the skill set that's required to operate it. At least that's what I see from looking online and things. But you're right. I mean, camera gear, camera lights, they should last for years before they're due for an upgrade. And I, by the way, guys, am the worst example of my own, I don't follow my own advice. But I'm on a hiatus right now from my wife from buying any cameras for a year.
She took the card from you?
She took the card from me. She said, no more cameras for at least a year. We're using these.
Well, and I tell people this too, and I think this rings true. When people were like, especially even in the camera world, people were like, what camera should I buy? I'm like, put it in your hand.
Yeah.
Like, does it feel good? Like, I've gone through a bunch of different camera systems using them. I landed on the one that I like to shoot.
Yeah.
You've landed on the one that you like, and you started there. You tried some other things. You were like, you know what? I like being home.
Yeah, it's 100% accurate. It was a very easy switch, and I was using mirrorless for the last year and a half, or a little less than a year and a half. And going back to a DSLR, it was the most natural transition. It was like riding a bike again, and I feel like I can get to my shots a lot quicker than I could with all the technology available in the mirrorless system.
And I just think, like you were saying, I think people need to worry a little bit more about learning how to operate their equipment. I mean, for example, like, people are still doing incredible work with B1s. They've been out now for going on almost 6 years.
Yeah.
So I mean, they're great pieces of equipment.
And revolutionary product, by the way. It's one of those things that comes out that changes the way that the industry, or the direction the industry goes in, which it did for us, by the way. And we still use our B1s. In fact, in our studio tour back there, some of those lights are B1s that we're using on a day-to-day basis, and they still work with the original batteries and everything.
Yeah, and so like I said, I think people just kind of get mired in that whole new technology thing, that they don't realize that, like, some companies, yes, we are working on new technology, but like, this is something that should last you forever. I mean, there's still crazily enough Pro 1 packs out there working, that started back with us in the 50s.
Yeah.
So it's.
But that's the point: is you buy good quality gear, it will last you forever, and ultimately ends up costing you less money too.
Totally.
And it's reliable, and it also goes to say that you don't want to be on the middle of a shoot and have a light not fire or something break, and that has, I've seen that happen before, and it's not a good experience for your client. So going back to that experience, really important to make sure that everything's working correctly, and like I said, we've made the decision to invest in the Profoto system, and it has worked out great for us.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And I know we were talking about 5 things people who are just getting into should look out for. So and we I always ask you about your story and stuff like that. So when people are looking into like starting into wedding photography, obviously most of these people need to start second shooting. So what's like the best way of finding that person to get in there with to start second shooting?
Yeah, so reaching out to people is important. I feel like oftentimes photographers, when they're just starting out, and again, the experience I have is based on how I felt when I started as well too. You sometimes might be embarrassed, or you might feel that your skill set is inadequate. But there's a lot of things you can do, even if you're not amazing with the camera to start, right? You can assist and you can learn. I would personally, our studio, again, we operate with multiple photographers. I would rather train somebody from scratch rather than find somebody who's already set in their ways, because I feel like it delivers on a better experience to our client. It's more consistent with our brand messaging, and I feel like if I'm learning in that perspective, right, I can learn how to do things correctly and get there a lot faster than people who didn't go through that process and tried to learn on their own, which I did, by the way, in the beginning. I didn't do all the things I'm saying I should do, which is why I'm telling people from experience it's a good way to go about doing it.
So that's awesome. So hopefully, I'm going to see if there's any other questions or anything like that. Okay, here from Laura Mae Skelton. She asked, when looking at new things to spend your money on, what should come first? More/better equipment or investing in a mentor?
I would definitely have to say investing in a mentor, and I'm sorry if Profoto.
No, no. I am always.
But the reason I say that is because education is so important, right? And in education and finding out what to do in your business allows you to have the money to be able to go invest in new equipment, right? So if you're making the decision between those two things, should I buy new gear or new education? It would be irresponsible for me to tell you to buy new gear if you don't need it. Right now, if you need it to do work, right? If you don't have lights and you need it to get to a certain level, then obviously, yeah, you got to make that investment, right? But if you're talking about replacing something that's already working or upgrading it, education obviously has to be the first thing that you look at, because that will make you more money to be able to do those things in the future.
Yeah, I think that's a really, really good point. And I'm all for, like, I tell people all the time, if Profoto is not the right piece of equipment for you, I'd rather you just not buy it. Because last thing I would ever want is someone to have a bad taste in their mouth for something they didn't enjoy. But I think you're totally right. I think if somebody's not, if you don't have the right equipment to do the job, then yeah, equipment's important. But, I think, once again, people get really caught up in like, ooh, this gear. And I was one of those people. I remember my photography suffered big time because I just was like, this is cool, and this is cool, and this is cool, and this is cool. And finally, I just had to sell it all. I was like, you know what? It's all gone.
Yeah.
And I'm stripping down to the basics, and then I started really figuring out who I was as a photographer and enjoying it again.
Yeah, it makes you really look at the art of it, right? And again, you're shooting for the right reasons at that point. And don't get me wrong, when you buy new gear, it's always inspiring to go out there and create with it, right? Which is the point of it, right? But if you're deciding again between like mentorship or education and an equipment purchase, then most likely 9 out of 10 times the education will be the better route to go.
I think that's solid advice. And so, awesome, man. I appreciate your time, dude.
Thank you.
I always love hanging out with you. So hopefully you guys had got some cool information. Michael's a wealth of it. Tell people where they can find you, like online.
Yeah, so our website is studio23photo.com. We also have a photographer's website, learnweddingphotography.com.
Okay, and social media, where can they find you?
Yeah, on Instagram, you can find me at Michael Anthony Photography. That's my personal Instagram, or our business is at Studio23Photo as well.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. So if you've never seen his work before, go check it out. It's amazing. There's some of it behind us in the frames, but thank you guys so much for coming. We'll see you guys on Friday for our live in a couple of days. So have an awesome day.
Thank you.